Hi and hello and welcome to episode 9 of Going Over. Let's go.
Good morning. Hello. Good
Oh,
morning.
okay. Just starting off with email notifications. Huh? That's solid. That's your move.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, we busy men. We busy dudes.
So just getting those Sunday morning emails. That's the move.
It's like
I
you
am
just hit me.
I am Fred Slow. You are Saleh Taylor. We're obviously going over everything in the world of pro wrestling, specifically as it relates to Duke City Championship Wrestling, the WWE, AEW, and kind of anything that catches our attention in the world of entertainment, including efforts outside of the game. So, last week, Solly, by the way, the feedback on last week's episode with Jacob Fatu, very high. Like, super
Yes.
happy about that.
Shout out to Jake, man. Simone Werewolf, appreciate you showing up. And he was very adamant that that's not going to be a one-time thing. He wants to come back and
Yeah.
talk some more story.
Yeah, he was incredibly kind to us, did a really good job of talking about the business, a little bit of insight. I just think there's something that's so fun about capturing the story of like the professional and personal balance, the going from home to the road, the code switching that's involved in that. And I know you've known Jacob for a long time, and obviously you guys have family relations, and the idea that you guys have known that he's going to ascend to that next level. But he kind of feels from the conversation of the world of pro wrestling to be the next big guy. Like the next time you see a post on whatever ESPN or whatever affiliate Vanity Fair, it's going to say, big pro wrestling free agent signed, and Jacob Fatu's name is going to be on there. So yeah, just kind of a really, I don't know, cool get for us early. So thank you for facilitating that.
Thank you so much for that, man. Yeah, and actually, yeah, that there's something special. This is really cool aura about him that feels like it almost like a real time watching a redemption arc because
Yeah.
everyone's aware of what happened, and one of the coolest things he was talking about was like just timing. And you got to respect it, and you got to take the licks that life throws at you, and just got to say thank you, man. Have another, learn from your mistakes, and just get going. And uh, there seems to be some momentum on
Yeah.
what the next big thing that could happen. I'm excited.
He went
See
down
what happens
to.
for him.
Did he go down to Puerto Rico? Is that where he was?
Yes, yeah.
How'd that go?
I haven't reached. He hasn't got back to me yet because
Okay. Yeah.
he shuts down. But I know I know for a fact that he had fun. It's a fun thing for all, like, a lot of the men in our family. It's like a rite of passage. like
Yeah.
if you're in the business, you got to go to Puerto Rico, and especially with the Colon brothers too.
Okay.
Like the Colon family. Like, shout out to them. Like it's there's love there between our families, and I'm so happy that they've got him out there, and I know he put on a good show.
All right. Cool. Well, we'll definitely follow up on that whenever we follow up with he, and that'll be on a future episode of the program. Okay. So it's been a good week of pro wrestling, and you know what's happened with our September show from DCCW moving to our October show, October 19th, Historic El Rey Theater, DCCW tickets. You kind of know what's up. The thing that's so interesting is the state of New Mexico has incorporated me, Fred Slow, legally, Fred Slow. I guess not legally Manfred Slow. They've incorporated me into the folds a little bit as far as the rules committee for the state as it relates to the state athletic commission. And that is what, Sully, that's the governing body. That's who makes this thing work. And maybe for the layman out there that's not super plugged into the world of pro wrestling, it kind of works like this. So your state is governed, right? You have laws. Cool. Within your laws, you have statutes. Cool. Then within your statutes, you have rules. And that's kind of the series of how it works. And the shortest version of this is if you break a rule, probably nothing's going to happen to you. If you break a statute, you're probably going to catch a misdemeanor. If you break a law, you're probably going to catch something a little more serious. And with that said, that's how this thing's tiered out. Now, this isn't just true for pro wrestlers, Saleh. This is true for barbers. This is true for really any licensed professional in anything. But as we're going to talk today, we're going to speak only to pro wrestlers. We might talk a little bit about mixed martial arts. We might talk a little bit about boxing. We might talk a little bit about bare knuckle fighting. Also falling under that cap is like combat, like Eastern Asian sports. That would be like jiu-jitsu and taekwondo and all that kind of stuff. But anything where there is competitive fighting, there's what's known as sanctioned and unsanctioned events, right? So the world of pro wrestling in the state of New Mexico has a sanctioning system. It's called a licensing system, and I'm now officially, whatever that means, a part of the process for designating rules and kind of identifying what is important, and what's kind of gone to the wayside. What has been some time, and I'll give you an example, Saleh, before I open it up to you, which is there's an entire subsection in the rule book, and I don't physically have it in front of me, but I've become an expert. The expert is such a lame word. I've become an authority, and so
That's right.
as I've learned it, for instance, there was a section that said a winner of a pro wrestling bout can only be determined by a pinfall, a submission, or a countout. Okay, that's
Okay.
in the rules. Like, that's a pretty traditional approach to wrestling. Well, I said, so we're in this meeting, and I said in the meeting, I said, "Hey guys, the new Barbie movie just came out," and they're like, "Yeah, cool, Fred. Like, continue the story." And I'm like, "Well, what if we did a winner of the match rips the head off a Barbie doll?" I said, because that to me seems like a stipulation that I could create in the world of professional wrestling. And there was like this moment, and they're like, "Yeah, that does seem like pro wrestling." And the idea was, do we then remove? Do we change that ruling? I suggested very much that we do. So we took out an entire section of what garners a winner in the world of pro wrestling, because it's not simply put pinball, submission, disqualification, or countout. Like you can, like which will happen this upcoming October the 19th at the Historic El Rey Theater. You can rip the title belt hanging off of a rope above the stage in a ladder match, and that will identify your winner. So there's all these like weird policings and regulations that have existed for some time that me and some other members are making an effort on this committee to kind of clean up.
There's actually a really great example on that. Um, it shows on how much experience those who have influence over regulations from those
Mm-hmm.
who have experience in the field, or those who just has an idea of it. But the idea of regulations for, like, for governing board on like for combat sports, specifically wrestling, that just like comes from a point of like, all right, how can we do this as safe as possible, because we don't want to make the state look,
Yeah.
we don't want any liability, because we don't want for example, what happened with what was it Kentucky or Indiana, that they outlawed hardcore wrestling, and that was because of a promotion that was happening out there, and it took years for promoters to talk them down to, like, hey, I want to have a show here, but we're not going to do these hardcore death matches. We're not going to do, like, please let us do a show.
Indiana.
That was Indiana, right?
Yep.
And it took years of undoing a lot of the damage that, like, reputation of, you're gonna come here, you're gonna see blood and guts. Like, no, these are supposed to be family events.
Yeah.
So they had to get a little bit stringent on regulation. They had to, like, because like this is making our state look bad if we're allowing this. So but they that came from people who just saw from a, just saw, and like didn't completely understand. But at the same time, we understand they had to like come in and step in a bit and make sure that, like, hey guys, let's like lock down on this. Um, but that was really cool. Sometimes when they try to get too definitive on like what stipulates winning or not, you're like, hey, there's got to be a little wiggle room, but we'll make sure that we'll do it in accordance
Yeah.
with the law, and like,
Well,
we're not gonna make it look bad.
and again, this is rules, right? So in this
Yes.
order: rules, statutes, laws, right? It literally goes in that direction. And I'll give you an example, one that I think is really relatable. It's against the law to steal. That's an obvious one, right?
Yes.
So there's different degrees of that, right? So I'm going to give you a hypothetical one. In your state, if you broke into the newspaper company and you stole every newspaper printed in the day, that's breaking the law. You're gonna face those consequences. If you put 50 cents in the paper vending machine on the street corner and you take two papers instead of one, that's breaking a statute. Like, because you're only supposed to take the one. Like, you could maybe get in a little bit of trouble for that. You probably won't. And then lastly, with the rules, is if you see that same like newspaper machine like open, like someone didn't close it after they took their paper, and you take it, well, now you're breaking a rule. You didn't pay at all. So all these are of varying degree, right? And they all have different levels of severity, and we're at the very bottom one. Like we're messing with the hey, why is this even in writing if it's not a thing we utilize? And I think that's a great question, because I think this might be the answer. So as I put a lot of effort into it here in the state of New Mexico, but I bet this stands true for every state that still kind of incorporates pro wrestling under their state statutes of commissioned and sanctioned sports, I think it was all a kayfabe push. I think that years ago, and we'll use the guy at the very top, Vince McMahon, for so many years, they made an effort state to state to validify the product with regulation and rules, and then they would do what? They put the bill. They had the money for it, So we would create all these regulations that were money absorbing, and then they would be able to easily afford it, and that would keep the territories at a minimum. So the idea was you would have someone on the inside in a state. I'm not going to say anyone in New Mexico specifically, but you kind of get where I'm going. And they would say, hey, push these things through, do this thing, and here's a couple bucks. Thank you for your effort. This is important. And then whenever, pro wrestling would roll through, or pro wrestling was trying to start up, that same individual that collected a couple bucks, this is in all 50 states. I'm not talking just about New Mexico.
Yeah.
They would help those that had lined the pockets a little bit, and they would interfere with those who did not line the pockets a little bit, and if they were instructed to by those who did. And I think this was a business practice for a lot of years. And I think, when was kayfabe broken? Late 80s, I guess. So whenever kayfabe was broken so many very years ago, just none of this stuff changed because there was no reason to. And the territory system, it kind of dissolved at that point, and you have a lot of fun, independent pro wrestling. I've looked up all of this country, what I believe to be like the most prominent independent organizations going. I think we're on the path with DCCW. I think as a startup, what are we, like 6 months in now?
Yeah.
I think we have a shot to get some places like similar market size. There are cities that don't have what we have.
Yeah.
And, there are definitely people who are capable. There are definitely people that monetarily could do it. There are definitely sales guys like myself and you who could go out and figure this thing out. But there's all these stipulations and stuff in the way that keep it from happening. And that's the idea of this thing, Saleh. So as I'm in this meeting and we're going over like rule changes and adaptations, and by the way, I'm not just doing it for pro wrestling, I'm doing it for MMA and combat sports and all kind of other likes. I end up finding that this door is a lot bigger than you would think it would be. This door of opportunity is not this narrow passage that only so many bodies can get through, but I feel that pro wrestler, promoter, and those adjacent to the industry for some time had turned the State Athletic Commission into like a boogeyman. I felt they had created a narrative that was, number one, misinformed, number two, incorrect, and that they thought that this thing was entirely in existence to inhibit. And I recognize they're there to inhibit as it doesn't relate to the rule book. I'm absolutely agreeing with that. Why has no one until this point tried to get in and modify the rule book? Like, I don't understand why there'd be so much effort against fighting against the established versus just changing the established. Because we've been in the game about 6 months, and I don't think it's so unique to say, hey, the rules to this game of Monopoly aren't for me. We're going to do some house rules. Because that's what we're trying to do here with pro wrestling, is create house rules. So I reached out to wrestlers. I reached out to promoters. I reached out to anyone that I thought was invested and had a stake, as I identified it, which is not a great amount of resource, but it's my 6 months of experience here and my 30 years of fandom. I said, what things do you guys want to see changed? And we had a lot of really good suggestions, right? Like one of the rules is you can't touch audience members. Well, how difficult is that if a little kid wants to give you a high five or a hug, right? So see ya. That one's gone. You know what I mean? So there's like all of these like ideas and change that came from people who've been in the trenches. And it just, to me, seems like it's like the most positive movement that pro wrestling has seen in the state of New Mexico in at least the time I've been a part of it or a fan of it, or the time I've lived in New Mexico, which is 6 years. Then on to the next step, which is what? We're going to change more. We're going to change statutes. We're going to go from the rules to the statutes to the laws. And the idea is we find who? We find the legislator that's passionate. We find the city officials that are passionate. We find elected officials that are passionate. And then you start moving forward. And before you know it, we're going to be living in a cornucopia of pro wrestling, Saleh, to where not only are we creating the product we want to create, we're creating it within the guidelines and the rules that we create.
Yeah.
And that to me is going to be so incredibly positive for the industry. The little hiccup, though, my man, and this is where I'm going to ask for your opinion, is pro wrestler. Like, how do you get child? How do you get pro wrestler? How do you get promoter? How do you, and when I say pro wrestler, I mean all industry. I don't just mean the guys in the ring. How do you get that individual to realize that not only is the boogeyman not real, we actually become that entity. Like we, the working class, this is labor versus, versus control. Like, because I'm pro labor. How do you convince these guys that the mindset is changing? We are changing it. We're in control of it. Everyone be cool. Like, how do you get everyone to accept the idea that, like, we are starting with the littlest step, the first step? How do you convince everyone, Saleh, to say, hey, these guys are on track. We have to work in the right direction together because a lot of us makes a lot and individual clusters doesn't do anything.
It almost sounds and feels like trying to convince a child to eat the vegetables.
Yeah.
It's like I'm telling you, this is good for you. If you trust me, take these in. It will pay off in the long run. It's one of those things where you realize some things that are better for you will affect you in the long run, as opposed to something that will affect you right away.
Yeah,
it's the gratification utilized. It's usually fades after you feel it. You have to. Well, you're in the position to influence the culture, and it will have to actually, take a poll at every show. That's the one of the actually taking a poll will be a very good way.
Friend of the broadcast, Lav Rip, says take a poll at every show and literally see what the fans have to say about it. I don't hate this idea at all. And maybe it's not a paper ballot system at the thing, but you know what I have? Every single individual who's ever bought tickets from holdmyticket.com for Duke City Championship Wrestling Show, I have their email. I can send this thing out, and the thing that to me is going to help this industry grow is that feedback from fans.
Yeah.
Is that feedback from performers? Is that feedback from you, who's been part of the industry forever? And then taking that in Saleh, in a presentable form, right? In a presentable fashion, and and it has to be bipartisan, my man. We live in such a polarized world. Last night, by the way, way to go. We're recording on October the 1st. The country's not shut down. But man, like, it has to be everyone in unison. And, the interesting thing to me, and I always use this analogy about a ship, is everyone on the ship is making it go. Somebody's the captain. Somebody's the janitor. The ship doesn't go without everyone. Mm-hmm. So it's like you just recognize we're all on the same ship and we're all going towards the same rising tide. And if we can catch it together, it works really well. But like you were saying, Saleh, and I'll let you come back to that point, is what is the best way to talk to, confirm? I have no idea what those balloon things were. What is
you?
What is the best way to get everyone on the same board so that it can move in the right direction? Because as I'm trying to spread like notice to individuals, right? So I'm at this commission meeting and they're like, hey, Freddie, heads up. Licensed performers are held to this regulation. Unlicensed performers are held to this regulation. Just let your guys know, and then there'll be like a difficulty. And some of the guys who for so very long have been really successful, and you don't want to, and I know I'm railroading here, but you don't at all want to squash anyone who has found success with their own approach. I got through professional radio for the last 21 years today. Today is my 21-year anniversary of professional radio. Thank you. I don't believe that anyone can tell me a better way to do radio than the way I did radio, because I'm really good at it. I'm really successful. That's a weird, humble brag out loud. I've made a lot of money. I can't tell a single pro wrestler, ring announcer, referee, bell guy, jump over to other forms of combat sports. I can't tell anyone how to find success because they found it on their own, especially as they identify that word success, which is so incredibly difficult to do, right? So as I'm saying, hey, here's the knowledge I have. And you'll get feedback, which was, hey, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, this was the regulation. I go, well, and this is going to come as a surprise, everyone in the world. It's different authorities. It's different individuals. It's different mindsets. This isn't the America of the 1950s. It's like we have to accept this idea that growth can come. And I'm really struggling, Sally, and I'll circle back to you. I'm really struggling on how to convince not just the state of New Mexico, but unregulated Texas to put in some regulations. You know what I'd like for my guys in New Mexico? To not go and wrestle guys in Texas every week and they not have blood tests. I don't know how safe those guys are being. I don't know what world they live in Mexico. You know, how do you then spread into Colorado and say, hey, I recognize that people literally travel here for death matches. I get it because there are so few rules. If I can't get the state officials to make it, can I find the promoters and say, hey, let's just run our dudes through a HEP panel? Like, let's just figure, like, let's make sure everyone's, because the last thing I want is my guys who are doing everything in their possibility to be safe, to be exposed to people who aren't. I will table that for a second and hand it to you.
I'd say for lack of a better way of putting it, you may need to approach it as a politician. And
Yeah.
it's a momentum game where you start with the little changes that become bigger and bigger and bigger. And you show that I can follow through on these because I'm looking out for you. But, just letting others know, putting others on notice that if you're going to come here, we have expectations, we have regulations. And when our guys go out, they have certain expectation when they go, and that may help shift their focus and realize I probably don't want to do business with these guys because they don't have my best interests in mind. But you being in a position though, like where you create the culture of we want to tell a good story. We want our guys to be in as best a position, be as successful as they can, however they define their success. But we started with something small, like, all right, you step in this ring or you step in this town, you want to do something, you're going to get tested.
Yeah.
And you start with that, and it changes their mentality. And that weeds out a lot of other people that, like, unfortunately, that may or may not have, adhered to that in the past, or when they realize, okay, this is real, like, and this is like something that's been on my mind for a lot lately is longevity in this business. It's crazy. Like Daniel Bryanson had a really cool promo that he cut last week, and he talked about, I promised my little girl when she's 7, I'm going to slow down with my career, and she's getting there. So that means I'm now in my last year of my career.
Yeah.
But then for those who didn't notice, he's been in the business. He's been working over 20 years. His journey has taken him all over the place. And for those few who are still in the business well into their 50s and 60s and still able to draw and able to make money, you see the effects that it's taken on their body. And so there's this really cool there's this really cool approach, and there's this really cool mentality change that you got people like Steven Richards, that his YouTube channel is killing it, and he's taking a hard analysis on the business and on what's happening now. And his thing is like, I want these guys to keep working as long as they can. I want them to have this shift, because we need to save the wrestlers from themselves sometimes, because they want to get that instant reaction from, they want to put on a show. We put our bodies through it to make sure that people they're watching, experiencing this, feels it. But there's that distant thought that we need to adhere. There's that voice we need to hear and listen to sometimes. Like, hey man, you gotta be, you want to do this, you want to keep doing this, you don't have to do that spot. And so when you're putting in regulations, when you're putting in rules and statutes, you're letting them know, once again, like, I want you to eat your vegetables because I want you in this as long as possible, because I want you to keep making money in this business. I'm looking out for you. Please trust that we're doing this. So I believe that when you have clear, transparent, when you have clear and very transparent intentions,
regulation,
regulation, and your intent, like, I'm doing this because I want you to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And it starts with little things, and like, all right, very, very first thing, we're going to get you tested. and I want you to, more important, I want you to be aware where you're at with
Yeah.
yourself, and I want you to be aware with, because you're sharing yourself with other people, and you're trusting, and that it's a momentum game. You got to start
The
small and
yeah.
build from there.
Well, the one that jumps out to me too is like a level of accountability, and
Mhm.
for I won't use promoter in this example. I'll use pro wrestler. So let's say you're in the state of New Mexico and you're a licensed performer. Great. I can tell you all the hoops you jump through, including licensing, including blood tests, including physicals, including insurance. Like there are all these things you have to possess to be a licensed and going professional. Cool. With that said, DCCW, we flip the bill on all that stuff. Like I flip the bill on all of that stuff for these guys. And the reason we do that is because I want guys who I know are invested, right? And the last thing I want is for an individual to be in a situation against another individual somewhere who doesn't think those things matter. Because if you don't think those things matter, what else in your thought process don't you think matter? Do you not think training mattered? Do you not think cardio mattered? Do you not think my safety mattered? Do you not think the approach to this thing that I consider either a profession or a hobby to whatever degree, are you not accountable for the amount of work that I am accountable for? Because I am terrified as a professional to have association with individuals that don't have the same tier of investment that I have. We have ambulances at Duke City Championship Wrestling, right? We have an emergency response vehicle right there. And Saleh, you step in the ring on October the 19th. You know what you can do to your beautiful lady who I have met, who knows me personally? You can tell her before you leave the house, or she comes with you, hey, babe, I'm coming home safe. Even if something goes wrong, there's help right there to help me. I don't understand how there would be any sort of resistance to that, because you can put energy into resisting insurance and blood tests and health exams and licensing and medical personnel. You can put all that, or you can put that effort into creating an environment financially, emotionally, spiritually, to where all these things are not just accepted, they're celebrated.
Yes.
And I want for that. I want for every individual who starts their day, who wakes up as a pro wrestler, I want them to wake up tomorrow as a pro wrestler. Yeah. And I don't want them to wake up tomorrow as a pro wrestler with Hep A because they had a weird interaction with an individual who didn't bother to treat this as importantly as they do. And I'm having a really difficult time conveying that this isn't a game anymore when you're doing it on our level. This is a professional experience. But again, I have that little thing similar to the way that pro wrestling is like, hey, I want to buck authority. Hey, I got into this world because it's alternative from a traditional job. And I got into this world because I'm an entertainer and I like doing it through the physical. You know what? Me too. 100% me too. But I have that thing, just like you do, where I can't ever tell you what to do. Because if I'm telling you what to do, you're not on the same level as me. If I'm telling you, you have to play by the rules, I don't want that. I want guys that are saying, hey, I'm here to play by the rules. I don't super like the rules. I'd like to change the rules a little bit. Deal. Me too. You know what I'd like for there to be? No rules. So I can do what I intend is best. I'm sorry, I'm on one, Sully. The same reason I hate Title IX. Like, I don't want any governing body to tell any university, you have to, at a certain expectation, make effort, appeasement, and goods for women athletes. I think it is stupid because universities should want to do it. And the ones that really want to do it, your Connecticut's and Tennessee's and Baylor's, and we could keep filling out the list. They have top tier programs that give to women athletes the way that they deserve. And the ones that don't, the ones that do the craptacular approach, I can name you 20 D2s. I can name you 20 D3s that put zero effort into their women's sports outside of the exact bare minimum. And it infuriates me because I don't want to mess with you. I want to mess with people who want to mess with me. And I get stuck because those same D2 and D3s that I just talked about, they found success as they define it. And I have a really hard time telling anyone not to do that.
Mm-hmm. I'd say in this case, your ally, your strength is information. That is the biggest thing. So I'd say starting with a poll, and gathering that data from fans to our performers to everyone involved and saying, this is where we're at. tell me what you've noticed. What are things that you want to see, and let's see why we haven't seen those or why we
Yeah.
can't. And if it's an issue of safety, like, all right, there's no go on that. But or if it's an issue of language, then we'll talk about that. Let's focus on that, because I want to enhance the product as much as possible and give the people what they want to see, if it coincides with our philosophy
Core
on
values.
safety,
Yeah.
core values of safety, of us making sure, because you and I are both the same way. Our performers are the same way. We will break our backs to make sure that you guys have a good time. But we need to save it. We need to save each other from each other, and like say, hey, I know what you. I know I love that passion, but I want you to wake up, not with that.
Yeah.
I want you to wake up tomorrow. I want you to continue doing this, because we legit care for everyone that's involved in this, because we know what goes into this. We know what we want from this, and we want everyone to have a good time. We want everyone to enjoy, and we want everyone to just feed into this. The beautiful thing about this town, about our product, is people are loving it, and people continue to come out, and it's growing because people want something like this. So you being in an authority position, it helps us out a lot to better understand why things are the way they are.
Well,
and yes,
and it's a shoot authority position. It's not. This is not a gimmick authority position. And we got some feedback from the live chat. Gabe Gambino is the lead singer of Man High. You heard him guest commentate on the DCCW broadcast last week as he sat in for Chris Burnett, who, if you haven't seen the latest episode, no spoilers here, please take advantage of the YouTube channel. YouTube.com/@DCCDub is just about as entertaining as anything you'll ever find. Gabe's also a barber, though. He's a licensed barber, right? So, quote, most of the licensing and barbering is avoiding the spread of disease. I discreetly look for scalp for things that could affect me, the clients, the guy next getting the cut. It takes care it takes care to do anything. He's if he sees lice, he makes moves on it. And in the world of pro wrestling, I'll give you an example. I grew up in a part of the country where we don't believe that disease is real. I grew up in a part of the country where we don't believe that open wounds and bloodborne pathogens exist. Okay, can't change that from you. But what I can do is, when you get in the ring, I can tell you that this open exposure from the blood match that you had a night before on a Friday, because we're performing on a Saturday, that you cannot participate unless that thing is tended to by a professional beforehand that gives the okay. I'm not a professional. Saleh's not a professional. The guy in the locker room that tapes your ankle is not a professional. He's your traveling buddy. We have to have a licensed someone. And I cannot enough stress the level of health and importance. Also, Gabe chimes in. One thing I appreciate about knowing you guys since our first show is how we wouldn't start till the ambulance is there, the medical screens, etc. We'll still we can still buck the system without being stupid. I have no interest in being stupid. I also don't want to buck the system. I did have an issue. We 2 shows ago, we have an authority from the state there, and we're going through our blood test results, and somebody's got a thing on their test, right? And the authority's like, hey, this is interesting. Like, I don't know what the rules are. Here's the thing. You should know what the rules are. Like, you're the state authority. And I recognize that you primarily participate in MMA and boxing. You primarily participate otherwise. But I know the rules. I looked at the rules. The thing that came up here, that thing doesn't matter. We tested for it. We found it. But it's not on our banned list because it's not going to harm others.
Yes.
Therefore, go away. Shut up. Like, get more understanding, training, investment. So we're at this rules meeting, Saleh, and I say to the rules committee, I say, hey, the person from the state who comes and coordinates our event, I was like, I have a recommendation for that person. I no longer want to be assigned a person from the state who's learning my industry as they go. I want someone who puts my industry not just on the same tier as boxing and kickboxing and MMA and all these other things. I want someone who puts it above. And the commission says to me, if you have someone that you think is qualified, send them over. Deal. Done. We're sending a guy over. It's everything we can do to make the situation better outside of the resistant, combatant, I don't know what verbiage to use, approach. We're going to use you actually have rules here for me to succeed. I'm going to utilize those.
Yeah.
And it's wild to me that this seems like such a revolutionary idea to get people. I know my arms are so big and I'm feeling around.
I
It's
love it.
wild to me
Keep it, baby.
that
Keep
this
it,
is
keep it.
it's such a revolutionary idea that for so long, this repetitive failed approach that was taken by professional wrestler and promoter and person with a cool venue and person with a fun idea that they tried for so long that failed.
Mhm.
You know how I know it failed? There was no pro wrestling when we started. There are people who will claim there was pro wrestling, but you know who had heard of that? Pro wrestlers. You know who hadn't heard of that? Anyone. Right now, me and you, we go to the Albertsons on a busy intersection in Albuquerque and we put on DCCW hats. People are going to say that's my thing because we've done so very well at putting that in front of people. And I'm so very proud of it. And the people who did it before us, Mike London. Mike London did it for a bunch of years. I never met Mike London. I'd love to meet his family. I'd love to hear the stories. Stories. Destiny did it for 13 years. Those guys were pros. You know what I'm going to do? Make sure we celebrate them in our world. I'm going to make sure we take the guys who did it for so very long, so very well, because we plan on doing that. But we're going to do it one step higher because we're going to make the rules our rules. And we're going to get it perfect. Make sure everyone's safe, man. That's the part that I keep getting so fired up on. It's not safe. Also from the chat, Flo Gambino 2024. I'm busy. I can't be president. I'm running a pro wrestling organization. Saleh.
I already see the tagline. Slow Gambino, eventually.
Yeah, no.
Slowly but surely. I try to make it my goal every time we're taping this is if I can get you to cut a promo. I love getting you fired up. It's one of my favorite things, man. It's like,
well, I talked to you off air too. Like
I love it. No, man. You say good stuff.
You and I are friends. Like we do phone calls. Like it's always the same way because you got a little bit of Islander in you, obviously. Yeah, so man. Every time we talk, we can't talk business. We can't talk until you're like, "Hey, Fred, how are you? How's your family?" And I'm like, "Heck yeah, man." You know what that means to me because you don't get that from everyone. You know that stuff's important. Like.
I work with people I care about.
Yeah.
You know, and more importantly, I care about the people I work with. And
when you got to be selective, you got to be selective on them too, you know, because you end up like in this industry where so many people have been, for some reason, wronged by individuals that they've given false value to. You know, they'll say, hey, this is my business partner. This is my promoter. This is my tag team wrestler. This is my whatever. And at some point, almost in the 100th percentile, someone has done someone dirty. Mm-hmm. And they do that based off what? Something mentally or emotionally or spiritually or financially or whatever. Here's the thing. DCCW audience, DCCW owner, DCCW performer, no one has made significant amounts of money here. We've all made the amount of money we're supposed to make in an evening. Every dollar I made or Aaron Burnett has made or Joe Singer has made back into the company. Every sponsorship that's come into the company. Pro wrestlers came to us the other day. We have a tiered system, right? If you're from out of town, there's a salary. If you're in town, there's a salary. The in-town guys are like, hey, heads up. Our salaries become a little difficult because the demand for seating is so like incredible. We need better opportunity for that. Deal, change. You know, there's no just governing authority of oppression. There's we are in charge. We make the rules. Tell me what rules you want. And I can't get that to click, you know? And also, no reason any of them should trust me or you or Aaron. They probably should Joe. He's been a pro wrestler a long time. Because we're all brand new to this thing.
Yeah.
This thing of pro wrestling. Am I brand new to entertainment? I'm not. And have I been in it a lot longer than some others? Probably have. But it's not considered like the same journey, you know?
Yeah.
The same way if a pro wrestler was like, hey, Fred, I want to host a radio show. I'd go, oh, that's cute. Cute,
man. I believe in you.
Yeah. Oh, you'll do great.
No, it just this is a shoot. We care.
Yeah.
About the business. We're aware of where we are at, but also more importantly, we are aware of where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And we got we got places to go, big events to follow through on. We're a bunch of dreamers, man.
I agree.
And we want to do this as well, as safe as possible, as thoroughly, as efficient as possible, utilizing whatever means we can to make sure that as we're on the way up, we're taking care of those with us along the ride. You know, and
yeah,
we're passionate about this, man, because you know It's crazy. Today is the year anniversary when the great Antonio Inoki passed away.
Isn't that wild?
That's why Wrestle Dreams happening today up in Seattle and hometown baby. And just thinking back of the legacy, and made me think about my uncles when I would inform them that one of the people that they share time with on the road, were like, "Hey, did you hear so and so passed?" And seeing my uncles just like stop, and you can tell, like you can tell when that thing you hear before you pass, you see everything in your life before, but you see every moment that is shared with them. This is the reason why we're doing what we're doing and why we're doing how we're doing, because every single person has been in it before. Every single person's in this now, and every single person that wants to do this. We want to do this because we want to, want to give back to the business that's been giving to us all these years.
Well, I think because we're obviously coming down to the end of it is, I've used the analogy of a ship a couple times today, and it's we have a path we want to get to. Let me rephrase this. We have a port we want to get to. We don't know what path we want to take. And if the State Athletic Commission of New Mexico is going to present turbulent waters to me, I'm going to go another direction. You know what I mean? I'm going to find calmer waters. And if I can't, say if that tributary or that canal is shut off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to those turbulent waters. I'm going to say, well, how do I calm these waters? What dam can I build? What dam can I remove? What is the solution to getting through this? And that's the goal here.
Yeah.
And if, as part of that process, the State Athletic Commission or those turbulent waters don't like me pushing back, they don't like that fight. And if they think, because I'm a licensed promoter, if they say, hey, Fred, we can punish you in this way if you do, fill in the blank, work an unlicensed entertainer, don't provide an ambulance, don't pay a fee, I don't want to give them that ammunition for that gun they want to shoot off their bow. I want to make sure that I am in step with the direction that we are going, so that when we eventually get there, not only are we there at the finish line, we finish first, and we're doing it with who? Those that can help us change. And it's a wild suggestion to me that not has everyone recognized that there's the game, but then there's everything that's around it, which we could call practice, we could call whatever, but you have to get really good at those things too.
Yeah.
So excited for the direction I'm here in the state. Thank you for letting me use the whole episode to kind of talk about the last 10 days. Yeah. And big thank you to some other promoters I met in town. No reason to name everyone's names, but sat down with a couple guys, a guy named Seville, a guy named Kevin, a guy named Lewis. We went through the handbook. A guy named Brandon helped a lot too. He gave me a bunch of suggestions. I'm not going to use any last names because I didn't ask permission, but all these guys made me a bunch of suggestions on the rule book. Joe, Hobo Hank, Joe gave me a bunch of suggestions. Aaron Burnett gave me a bunch of suggestions. We utilized those. And we sat down and wrote up several pages of amendments, presented it to the state in a like a formal open meeting setting. I mean, this is the most legitimate way you can do this. They came back and said, hey, received. We went through them point by point and bye. And then we took out, or we amended, or we changed, or we added, and we talked not just about rules, but we talked about fees, and we talked about statutes and pursuing the next steps to change what the currently is to what we believe it should be. It's just been a really professional process, and I've been really impressed by the bodies that have supported, including all those guys I just named. And hopefully at the end of the day, Sully, and I know we're at the end of the program, but hopefully at the end of the day, and I'm not saying it's going to be today, but could it be starting as early as 3 months, which is the rules change process? It could. Could we end up in a spot where in 2024, we are that much closer to the finish line that we're trying to get to? I think so. I really do. And I can promise you this, Duke City Championship Wrestling is not going anywhere for at least one calendar year, because we got books saying we can keep making it. Hopefully we get to the point where we got books saying we can make it a little bit longer. So it's been good. Everything's good. Just a lot of work that I didn't necessarily know I'd be jumping into when I jumped into the world of pro wrestling. So there it is. We obviously DCCW tickets.com. That'll get you into the October 19th show, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@DCCDub. That will get you to all of our online content. Don't forget DukeCityChampionshipWrestling.com. It's under a complete rehaul right now. Micah Frankel of Caged Minds is over there doing a lot of work on it. So check that bad boy regularly as we're updating it for content and all kinds of cool stuff. The merchandise store is on the way as well. So we're super excited about that. Got a bunch of new cool stuff coming out. We need to, Saleh, make a decision on if we're doing anything for Halloween for the October show. I think we should. I think we should do something.
I'm down, actually. Yeah, let's do it. I can be a wild Samoan.
Yeah.
We have options.
You shave off the beard and go as Yokozuna. That would be
dope, actually.
It would be super dope. It'd be incredibly dope. Final words, brother, before I cut it loose.
October 19th, baby, at the Historic El Rey DCC Dub, the ladder match, baby. We're gonna find out who the first champ's going to be for DCC.
Isn't that
Dub.
wild?
You don't want to miss this.
Hobo Hank versus Turbo Tony. It's literally good versus evil. I mean, it's going to be about as exciting of a night as you could possibly have in the world of pro wrestling. So we're excited for that. For Saleh Taylor, for myself, Fabulous Freddie Fame. Good job, everyone. GG.
Appreciate you.